Rain poured across the city salvage yard. Rows of rusted cars stretched as far as the eye could see. Most people saw nothing more than scrap metal. But Daniel Brooks saw something different. He slowly walked between the abandoned vehicles with a flashlight in one hand and a notebook in the other. Daniel was a single father. After losing his job a year earlier, he kept his small repair garage alive by fixing old cars and selling affordable vehicles to working families. Business wasn't easy. Every dollar mattered. One morning, the city announced a public auction. 17 abandoned vehicles. One lot. No individual sales. Starting bid, $2,500. Most buyers laughed. They're all dead. Nothing but junk. They'll cost more to tow than they're worth. Standing nearby was Victoria Hayes, CEO of Hayes Luxury Motors. She had come only to inspect a collection of exotic cars being auctioned later that day. When she noticed Daniel studying the abandoned vehicles, she smiled. "You're not seriously thinking about buying those?" Daniel looked up calmly. "I'm thinking." Victoria laughed. "Those cars haven't moved in years. My mechanics wouldn't even take them for free." Several dealers joined the laughter. One man shook his head. "You'll lose every penny you have." Daniel didn't argue. Instead, he continued checking VIN plates, tire wear, engine bays, and faded inspection stickers. He wasn't looking at how the cars looked. He was looking at their history. Then he found something unusual. Out of the 17 cars, 16 had ordinary registration records. But the 17th, a dusty dark blue station wagon parked in a far corner, had almost no ownership history. Its record suddenly stopped 15 years earlier. Daniel quietly smiled. Someone had forgotten this car for a reason. The auctioneer climbed onto the stage. Lot number 12. 17 abandoned vehicles. Opening bid, $2,500. Silence. Nobody raised a paddle. The auctioneer looked around again. "Any bids?" Daniel slowly lifted his number. $2,500. The crowd burst into laughter. Victoria folded her arms. "Congratulations. You just bought 17 dead cars." Daniel signed the paperwork without saying a word. As the tow trucks loaded the vehicles onto trailers, Victoria walked past him one last time. She smiled confidently. "In 30 days. You'll wish you'd never seen this junkyard." Daniel looked at the old blue station wagon. Then quietly replied, "Maybe. Or maybe. Someone else is about to regret leaving these cars behind." None of the people laughing realized. One forgotten document hidden inside that station wagon was worth far more than all 17 cars combined. By sunset, all 17 abandoned cars had arrived at Daniel's small repair garage. His daughter, Emma, stepped outside and looked at the rusty vehicles lined up in the yard. She blinked in disbelief. "Dad, did you really buy all of these?" Daniel smiled. "I did." She walked around one of the cars, gently touching the rusted hood. "Can they even be fixed?" "Some can. And some don't need fixing." Emma looked confused. "What do you mean?" Daniel picked up his toolbox. "The cars aren't the real investment. They're just the beginning." The next morning, Daniel began inspecting every vehicle one by one. Car number 1. A seized engine. Nothing special. Car number 2. Flood damage. Beyond repair. Number 3. Missing transmission. Number 4. Frame damage. By lunchtime, several neighbors had gathered outside the garage. One of them laughed. "I heard you spent your savings on junk." Another joked, "You should have bought lottery tickets instead." Daniel simply smiled and kept working. He wasn't discouraged. Because he wasn't looking for a working car. He was looking for a clue. Late that afternoon, he finally reached the 17th vehicle, the dusty dark blue station wagon. Unlike the others, it was strangely clean inside. Almost too clean. Someone had clearly taken care of it before it was abandoned. Daniel opened the glove compartment. Empty. He checked beneath the seats. Nothing. Then he noticed something unusual. The carpet in the trunk wasn't lying flat. He carefully lifted it. Underneath was a small steel compartment. Hidden so well that it could easily be missed. Emma gasped. "Dad! Was that always there?" Daniel nodded slowly. It was built into the car. He opened the compartment. Inside wasn't cash. It wasn't jewelry.
Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Enjoy the video.
It was a weatherproof metal tube. Inside the tube were several old documents. A folded property map. A notebook filled with handwritten engineering sketches. And a sealed envelope marked, "Private, do not destroy." Daniel carefully opened the envelope. His eyes widened. The first page contained the original ownership records of the station wagon. The owner wasn't an ordinary person. It belonged to Arthur Bennett, a brilliant automotive engineer who had disappeared from the industry 15 years earlier. Emma looked at her father. "Is that important?" Daniel nodded. "Very. Arthur Bennett invented several engine technologies that are still used today. But nobody knows what happened to his final project." As Daniel turned another page, he found a detailed blueprint. Across the top, in bold letters, were the words, "Project Phoenix, Prototype Hybrid Drive System." Daniel's heartbeat quickened. This wasn't just an old notebook. It appeared to contain the original design for an advanced engine concept that had never reached the market. Just then, a black luxury SUV stopped outside the garage. Victoria Hayes stepped out. She looked at the line of abandoned cars and smiled. "I came to see how badly this investment is going." Daniel quietly closed the notebook before she could see it. He smiled. "You'll find out soon enough." Victoria laughed. "I already know the answer." But she had no idea. The forgotten documents hidden inside that dead station wagon could soon become worth millions of dollars. Victoria stepped into Daniel's garage with a confident smile. She looked around at the 17 abandoned cars. "So, how many of them actually run?" Daniel calmly replied, "None." Victoria laughed. "I knew it. You spent $2,500 on 17 pieces of scrap." Daniel didn't argue. Instead, he locked the toolbox containing Arthur Bennett's notebook. Some investments don't make sense on the first day. Victoria shook her head. "Good luck." As she walked away, she never noticed the locked metal case sitting on Daniel's workbench. That evening, Daniel carefully read Arthur Bennett's notebook from beginning to end. It wasn't just a diary. It documented years of research. Prototype engine designs. Efficiency calculations. Handwritten test results. Near the final pages, Daniel found an important note. Project Phoenix is incomplete. The final prototype and testing records are stored in Unit 17. He frowned. Unit 17. Emma looked over his shoulder. "What does that mean?" Daniel turned the page. Tucked inside was an old storage receipt. Riverside Storage Facility Locker Number 17. The rental date was 15 years old. Daniel smiled. If nobody ever closed the account, the locker might still exist. The next morning, Daniel and Emma drove to Riverside Storage. The manager searched through old digital records. After several minutes, he looked surprised. "I can't believe this. The unit is still active. No one has opened it in 15 years." Daniel signed the paperwork. The manager handed him an old brass key. Together, they walked down a long hallway. Finally, they stopped in front of locker 17. Daniel slowly inserted the key. The rusty lock clicked open. Inside wasn't just one box. The locker was filled with shelves covered in dust. There were engine components, prototype parts, blueprint tubes, and a large wooden crate marked, Phoenix Prototype, Final Build. Emma whispered, "Dad. Is this what he was hiding?" Daniel nodded slowly. "I think so." Inside the crate was a complete prototype hybrid engine unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. Next to it lay a sealed envelope addressed to whoever finds this project. Daniel carefully unfolded the letter. It read, "If you're reading this, my work survived. I refuse to sell this invention because I wanted it to help ordinary people, not become another luxury product." Daniel stood silently. Arthur Bennett hadn't abandoned his life's work. He had protected it. As Daniel prepared to load the crate into his truck, footsteps echoed through the storage hallway. A familiar voice broke the silence. "So, this is what you've been hiding." Daniel turned around. Victoria Hayes stood at the entrance with two company lawyers behind her. She smiled confidently. "Arthur Bennett worked for Hayes Luxury Motors. Everything he created belongs to my company." Daniel calmly handed her the letter. "You should read the last paragraph." Victoria's confident smile slowly disappeared as she reached the final lines. The letter clearly stated, "Any company that abandoned this project has no legal or moral claim to it. The person who discovers and completes this work deserves the opportunity one was never given." The two lawyers exchanged nervous glances. For the first time, Victoria realized this wasn't about 17 abandoned cars anymore. It was about an invention that could change the future of the automotive industry. Victoria folded Arthur Bennett's letter and handed it back to Daniel. Neither of the company lawyers spoke. One finally broke the silence. "Legally, this changes everything." Victoria looked at him. "What do you mean?" "The letter doesn't transfer ownership by itself. But if Hayes Luxury Motors abandoned the project and never renewed its patents." He paused. "The company may no longer have exclusive rights." Victoria's confidence faded. Daniel quietly closed the wooden crate. "I'm not here to fight anyone. I'm here to finish what Arthur started." Without another word, Daniel and Emma carefully loaded the prototype engine and the blueprints into their pickup truck. Over the next 3 weeks, Daniel barely slept. Every evening after closing his garage, he worked on Project Phoenix. Emma organized Arthur's notes while Daniel rebuilt the prototype piece by piece. Many of the components were outdated. Some had to be redesigned. Others had to be manufactured from scratch. The work was slow. But every day, the engine came closer to life. Meanwhile, rumors began spreading through the automotive industry. A small-town mechanic was rebuilding Arthur Bennett's lost invention. Journalists started calling Daniel's garage. Engineers wanted to see the project. Even investors began making offers. Daniel politely declined every one of them. "It's not finished yet," he said. Victoria wasn't willing to give up. She gathered her executive team. "I want that engine." One executive asked, "Should we buy it?" Victoria shook her head. "He won't sell." Another executive suggested, "Then let's offer him a partnership." Victoria nodded. "Prepare the papers." Exactly 28 days after the auction, Victoria arrived at Daniel's garage again. This time, she wasn't laughing. She placed a contract on his workbench. "We'll invest $20 million. You keep leading the project. We'll manufacture it together." Daniel didn't even open the folder. "I'm honored." "But no." Victoria looked surprised. "You haven't even read it." Daniel smiled. I don't need to. I'm building this for ordinary families. Not for luxury showrooms. For the first time, Victoria realized she had completely misunderstood him. He wasn't chasing money. He was chasing purpose. Just then, Emma rushed into the garage. Dad! The engine. It's ready. Daniel and Victoria walked into the workshop. The rebuilt prototype sat on a test stand. Everyone held their breath. Daniel pressed the starter button. The engine came to life instantly. It ran smoother than anyone expected. Almost silently. The computer screen displayed incredible numbers. Fuel efficiency was nearly 40% higher than conventional performance engines. The engineers watching through the live stream couldn't believe it. Victoria stared at the monitor. If those numbers are real, Daniel nodded. They are. Before anyone could celebrate, Daniel received an unexpected phone call. He answered. After listening for a few seconds, his expression changed. What? Emma looked worried. Dad, what's wrong? Daniel slowly lowered the phone. The city just informed me. The land where my garage stands has been sold. And the new owner wants us out in 7 days. Victoria looked shocked. Then she quietly asked, who bought it? Daniel looked toward the window. A black limousine had just pulled into the parking lot. Stepping out was one of the richest industrialists in the country. And he wasn't there to congratulate Daniel. The black limousine stopped outside Daniel's garage. A tall man stepped out, followed by 2 assistants. His name was Edward Sinclair, founder of Sinclair Industrial Holdings. One of the most influential manufacturing entrepreneurs in the country. Daniel walked outside. Can I help you? Edward smiled. I believe you already have. Daniel looked confused. Edward continued, I've spent 10 years searching for Arthur Bennett's final project. And today, I finally found it. Victoria stepped forward. Are you the one who bought this property? Edward nodded. I am. Emma's face fell. So, you're going to close our garage? Edward looked at her and smiled kindly. No. I'm here to save it. Everyone stood in silence. Edward handed Daniel a folder. Inside was the property deed. Daniel looked up in surprise. You bought the land. But the garage is still yours. Edward nodded. I've transferred ownership to you. Daniel was speechless. Why? Edward took a deep breath. 20 years ago, Arthur Bennett gave me my first engineering job. When everyone else ignored my ideas. He believed in me. I've been waiting for the chance to repay that kindness. The room fell silent. Edward looked at the rebuilt Phoenix engine. Arthur always dreamed of building affordable technology. I won't let that dream disappear. Just then, Victoria stepped forward. I owe you an apology, Daniel. I laughed when you bought those 17 cars. I thought you had wasted your future. Daniel smiled. And now? Victoria looked around the garage. I realize you weren't buying old cars. You were buying an opportunity that nobody else could see. A week later, automotive journalists from across the country gathered outside Daniel's garage. The rebuilt Phoenix engine was officially demonstrated to the public. The results stunned everyone. It consumed significantly less fuel, produced lower emissions, and cost far less to manufacture than existing performance engines. News channels called it the biggest independent automotive breakthrough in years. Within days, manufacturers from around the world requested licensing meetings. Daniel refused to sell the invention outright. Instead, he created the Bennett Foundation, ensuring that part of every licensing fee would fund scholarships for young mechanics and engineers who couldn't afford technical education. Emma smiled as the first scholarship certificates were handed out. Dad! This is exactly what Arthur wanted. Daniel nodded. It was never about getting rich. It was about giving others the chance he never had. Meanwhile, Hayes Luxury Motors announced a partnership with Daniel's foundation to manufacture affordable hybrid systems for everyday vehicles. Victoria personally attended the signing ceremony. This time, she wasn't standing above Daniel. She stood beside him. As an equal. Exactly 30 days after laughing at the single dad who bought 17 dead cars for $2,500, Victoria looked at the crowded factory, the waiting journalists, and the families celebrating new opportunities. She smiled and quietly admitted, "I thought he bought junk." What he actually bought was the future. 30 days after the auction, the old salvage yard looked exactly the same. Rusted cars still filled the empty lots. Only one space was different. The place where Daniel had bought the 17 dead cars now stood empty. Reporters gathered outside Brooks' garage. Television cameras lined the street. Mechanics, engineers, and business owners had come from across the country to witness the official launch of Project Phoenix. Daniel stood on a small stage with Emma beside him. Behind them was the restored prototype engine that everyone had once believed would never work. Edward Sinclair stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we aren't celebrating an invention. We're celebrating the person who refused to see junk where everyone else did." The audience applauded. Daniel smiled modestly. "I didn't build this alone. Arthur Bennett started this dream. I simply finished it." The crowd erupted into applause once again. Over the next 6 months, the Bennett Foundation licensed the Phoenix technology to several manufacturers under one condition. Every company had to produce an affordable version for everyday families before building luxury models. The agreement changed the industry. Fuel-efficient vehicles became more accessible. Small repair shops received free technical training. Hundreds of young mechanics earned scholarships funded by the foundation. Emma proudly watched the first class of students graduate. Meanwhile, Hayes Luxury Motors experienced something unexpected. Instead of losing customers, the company gained public respect after partnering with Daniel's foundation. Victoria personally invested in apprenticeship programs for young technicians. During a press conference, a reporter asked her, "Looking back, what is your biggest business mistake?" Victoria smiled. "Thinking value only exists where everyone else is looking." She paused before adding, "And laughing at a man before understanding his vision." One afternoon, Victoria visited Daniel's garage again. No cameras. No reporters. Just a quiet conversation. She looked around at the restored cars parked outside. "I've been wondering." Daniel smiled. "What? Out of all 17 cars, how many were actually reparable?" Daniel laughed. "Only 3. Victoria looked surprised. 3. So why buy all 17? Daniel pointed toward the old blue station wagon. "Because I wasn't buying 17 cars. I was buying the chance that one of them contained something everyone else had missed." Victoria nodded slowly. "That's the difference between an expense and an investment." A year later, the city held a ceremony at the old salvage yard. A new training center for young mechanics had been built on the site. Above the entrance was a bronze plaque that read, "Opportunity rarely looks valuable at first glance. Those who see beyond appearances build the future." Emma smiled as she read the words. She looked at her father. "Dad. They all laughed at you." Daniel smiled. "They laughed because they only saw broken cars." Emma asked, "And what did you see?" Daniel looked toward the training center filled with young students learning new skills. "I saw possibilities." The camera slowly pulled back. The same man who had been mocked for spending $2,500 on 17 dead cars had built a foundation, changed an industry, and created opportunities for thousands of people. Sometimes, the greatest fortunes aren't hidden inside expensive things. They're hidden inside opportunities that everyone else is too busy laughing to notice.